How's it going, folks? This is Wayne R back with another technique lesson today, and today we're going to be talking about power chords. Now, power chords as a guitar player I think are quite important because it can really help you with other things. So one, it's a great sort of way of stretching your fingers, getting your fingers apart. Two, it's a movable chord, which is the same sort of, a bar chord's a movable chord as well. So it can help to break you into bar chords, which sort of as a beginner, I think bar chords are probably one of the hardest things to learn. But power chords, there was a saying, that all the punk movement and all that, if you learnt a power chord, basically anybody could play a guitar. And in a way that was sort of true, because if you learnt a power chord, you could learn sort of loads of songs. So there was a few sort of examples in the intro, obviously the Undertones, Teenage Kicks, there was Smells Like Teen Spirit, Nirvana, and it also did a little bit of the Pistols, God Save the Queen. So all those songs use power chords. So there's different ways that you can play a power chord. So without further ado, let's get in for a close-up. Okay, so as I was saying in the intro, there is different ways that you can play power chords, and I'm going to show you sort of the simple ways first. Now, if you ever see a chord, for example, an E5 or any sort of chord that's got a 5 after it, that's going to state that that's a power chord. Now, what a power chord normally is either a 2-note or a 3-note sort of chord. So we don't play like all the strings like we would on an E minor or 5 strings on an A or something like that. You're just literally playing 2 notes. So if we saw an E5, a standard way of playing an E5 will be if we put our second finger on the second fret on the A, and we're just going to play the low E string open and that A string together with downstrokes. So we're not going to be catching obviously the rest of the strings like we would on an open chord. We're just going to play those 2 strings with a downstroke. Okay, see I'm just doing downstrokes there. And that would be known as an E5 chord. So if I move my finger down to the D string on the second fret, and we now played an open A string and obviously that note. Same again with downstrokes, that would be known as an A5 chord. Okay, you can do a D5, so if we took a regular D and we took maybe, the second finger off and we play the open D string, the G and the B string together, again with downstrokes, that would be known as a D5 power chord. Okay, you can do an open G power chord as well. All we do, we take a regular G chord, but we try and let the pressure off the first finger, muting that A string, and we obviously that's a bit more effective when you get overdrive on, but that's how we play a G5. So those are sort of your open way that you can play power chords, in an open chord position, what I mean by that. But the power chords I'm going to be talking about are mainly sort of either a 2-note power chord, that's the movable power chord, or adding the little pinky on and making it a 3-fingered power chord. Right, so they are quite stretchy if you've never done them before, so I'm going to show you these because obviously on the fretboard, the layout, the frets get a little bit closer as you go further up the fretboard. So if we go for the first finger, that's going to go on the 5th fret on the low E string, and take your 3rd finger and put that on the 7th fret, that's going to be on the A string. In the same scenario, we're just going to hit it with downstrokes and play the E and the A string together. Try not to catch any of those strings if you can. Now, I appreciate a lot of people find that quite difficult, getting that stretch, so I do see some people playing it, with a little pinky, that would be on the 7th fret on the A string. You can do it that way, but to get into a little bit more experienced stuff, I'd probably advise you to try and do, with the 3rd finger. So, okay, so just strum that, get that so you can get it nice and tight, not hitting any of those other open strings. Okay, and then maybe practice moving that down 2 frets, so we could go. Now what normally happens when you move power chords, especially if you slide all the fingers will normally bunch together like that. So a little bit of advice for that is just maybe slide the 3rd finger and just lift the 1st finger up and then place it back down again. So if we were sliding it to the 3rd fret. So if you see that, I'm sliding my 3rd finger and then placing my 1st finger back on there. So So that's a great exercise, just maybe moving it down 2 frets and then back again. Maybe you could go down another fret. That's probably where it's the hardest place to play a power chord, because that's where the frets are at the widest. So eventually try and get that there. Start moving it back up again. You know, so practice sort of moving those around, you know, the fretboard. Another thing is moving it down 2 strings, because we could do exactly the same thing, same movement. If I now had my first finger on the 5th fret, that would be on the A string now, and my 3rd finger would be on the 7th fret, that was on the D string. So now we're just trying to hit the A and the D string together, okay? And a good way, if you struggle and you catch that E string, you just maybe lightly touch with your first finger that E string, and then that's going to be muted. So if you're going to hit that, it doesn't really matter anyway, but practice. Same thing if you want to move that around. Okay, so another thing to do after you've done that is maybe add those 2 things together. So I call this a sort of moving around in a little sort of rectangle, or, you know, if you like, the chord wise, we're moving around in a circle. So what we do, we start on the E and the A string, and then practice moving it down to the strings below. Maybe move that down 2 frets, and then move that shape up, and then back to where we began. Okay, so when you've got, you know, the hang of that, and you've got the hang of moving it around sort of thing, we could then go on to a 3-fingered power chord. So the same applies, the only difference now, we're going to add the little pinky, that would be on the 7th fret on the D string. So now we're doing a 3-fingered power chord. So now we've got to try and hit, when we do the downstrokes, the E, the A and the D string. And as you can hear, it just sounds a little bit beefier. I tend to use that power chord more than the 2-fingered one. So we could do exactly the same thing. Practice moving that down. So when we move down, we do exactly the same thing, only the little pinky will be on now on the G string, okay? That's not on the 7th fret there. So we're going to now hit the A, the D and the G together. Okay, so another good thing to practice on power chords is palm muting. Now what palm muting is, if you take that sort of part of your palm, the fleshy bit of your palm, we're just going to lightly rest that onto the strings and keep that on as we play, and we get a nice sort of crunchy sound, as opposed of if you play open, you can hear that. Now there is a bit of a threshold to this. If you do it too heavy, it's going to completely mute the strings out. If you do it too light, you're still getting the open string and it sounds a little bit messy. So this takes a lot of practice. So it is literally just sort of resting that part of your palm on the strings, you know, probably next to the bridge. Sort of roll your hand forward, and we're just going to do the downstrokes. So you could practice that with it. Sort of alternate between the two when you get good at that, you know. So that's sort of going, you know, the open one, playing that normal, and then palm muting. Okay, so thanks very much for watching. I hope you all dug that, and like I say, it is a real helpful way of one, getting your fingers stretched, and two, getting you moving around the fretboard. So it can sort of prepare you for bar chords, which as a beginner probably one of the hardest things to learn on a guitar. You always seem to hit a brick wall with bar chords. So I think power chords are a good way of getting into them, and plus there's loads and loads of great songs to learn. So hope you all enjoy that, hope you found that useful, and I will catch you all for a technique lesson very soon. Take care.